By the time you reach your 60s, people assume life slows down. That the chaos is behind you. That surprises belong to the young. They are wrong. My name is Margaret, and at 62, I believed I had finally earned peace. Not luxury, just peace. A quiet home. Predictable mornings. A life built carefully, patiently. Over nearly 4 decades. I lived alone in a modest neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio. 2 bedrooms. A small garden I tended myself. I worked part-time at the public library, more for routine than money. My days followed a gentle rhythm: coffee at dawn, books in the afternoon. Silence at night. My son, Ethan, was 34. He was my only child. His father died when Ethan was 12, leaving me to raise him alone. I worked extra shifts, skipped vacations, wore the same coat for 10 winters. Every sacrifice was intentional. Everything I did was for him. I thought that meant I could trust him. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 months before everything collapsed. Ethan called one evening, his voice warm and reassuring. "Mom," he said, "I've been thinking. You shouldn't be stressing over bills anymore. I can help you set up automatic payments. Just need your account details so I can make sure everything's running smoothly." I hesitated. I've always been careful with money. Years of scraping by teach you that habit. But this was my son. The boy I once rocked to sleep. The man I believed I had raised right. So I gave him limited access. I told myself it was practical, responsible, safe. 6 weeks later, he visited with his fiancée, Lila. She was young, mid-20s, and stunning in a way that felt deliberate. Perfect hair. Polished smile. Eyes that didn't miss details. She walked through my house slowly, taking everything in. The furniture. The walls. The clock above the fireplace. "This place must be worth quite a bit now," she said casually. "Property values around here are rising fast." "It's my home," I replied. "I'm not interested in selling." Ethan laughed too quickly. "She's just curious, Mom. You know how she is." But his hand tightened around hers, and for the first time, I felt something twist in my stomach. The following Sunday, I sat down with my coffee and opened my bank app. That was the moment my heart stopped. My savings account, the one I'd built slowly over decades, was almost empty. $127,000. Gone? My checking account showed less than $60. I stared at the screen, convinced I was misunderstanding something. That the app was wrong? That this was a temporary error? It wasn't. The bank confirmed the transfers. They were authorized. Made online. Sent directly to an account in my son's name. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat at my kitchen table for hours, staring at nothing, replaying every moment of trust one had ever given him. The next morning, my phone rang. "Ethan." I answered. "Mom," he said brightly. "Great news. I'm getting married tomorrow." My mouth went dry. We decided not to wait. The venue's booked. Everything's ready. "Ethan," I whispered. "My bank accounts." "Oh, that." He chuckled. Actually chuckled. "Yeah. I took the money. Weddings are expensive, you know. And we needed a fresh start. A pause. And there's something else. I sold the house. The world tilted. You what? I had power of attorney from those papers you signed last year. Closing was yesterday. You've got 30 days to move out. He sounded calm. Efficient. As if he were discussing groceries. I got a great price, he added. 340,000. That'll cover our condo. Down payment. You'll be fine on Social Security. Then, just like that, he said goodbye. The call ended. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear. And then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because, in that moment, I realized something my son did not. He thought he had taken everything from me. He was wrong. Because the house he sold was never the house I lived in. And the moment I understood what my son had actually done, I knew he had just destroyed his own life. After the laughter faded, silence filled the room. Not the soft, peaceful kind I was used to, but a heavy, deliberate quiet. The kind that forces you to think clearly whether you want to or not. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the grain in the wood, and asked myself one simple question. What had I actually lost? Not what my son thought he had taken. Not what he claimed to have sold. What had truly been taken from me? The answer surprised me. The house Ethan sold, the one he believed was my only property, was not my home. It never had been. 15 years earlier, when interest rates were low and my savings were stable, I had purchased a small rental property on Oak Ridge Lane. A practical decision. The rent helped supplement my retirement, and I kept the ownership simple by registering it in my own name for tax purposes. My real home, the one I lived in, cooked in, slept in, was something else entirely. It belonged to a family trust. My late husband's mother had been meticulous. Long before she passed, she placed this house into a trust, naming me both trustee and beneficiary. Mortgage-free. Protected. Legally invisible to anyone who didn't understand estate structures. Ethan had grown up in this house. But he had never known how it was owned. He was wrong. Because the house he sold was never the house I lived in. And the moment I understood what my son had actually done, I knew he had just destroyed his own life. After the laughter faded, silence filled the room. Not the soft, peaceful kind I was used to, but a heavy, deliberate quiet. The kind that forces you to think clearly whether you want to or not. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the grain in the wood, and asked myself one simple question. What had I actually lost? Not what my son thought he had taken. Not what he claimed to have sold. What had truly been taken from me? The answer surprised me. The house Ethan sold, the one he believed was my only property, was not my home. It never had been. 15 years earlier, when interest rates were low and my savings were stable, I had purchased a small rental property on Oak Ridge Lane. A practical decision. The rent helped supplement my retirement, and I kept the ownership simple by registering it in my own name for tax purposes. My real home, the one I lived in, cooked in, slept in, was something else entirely. It belonged to a family trust. My late husband's mother had been meticulous. Long before she passed, she placed this house into a trust, naming me both trustee and beneficiary. Mortgage-free. Protected. Legally invisible to anyone who didn't understand estate structures. Ethan had grown up in this house, but he had never known how it was owned. But then I paused. Did I really want to involve the police? He was still my son. The boy who scraped his knees riding bikes. The teenager who hugged me after graduation. The man I once trusted with my life savings. But then I remembered his voice. You'll be fine on Social Security. As if I were disposable. As if my life were already over. That was the moment something inside me hardened. I wasn't confused. I wasn't helpless. And I certainly wasn't finished. I spent the rest of the day organizing paperwork. Receipts. Deeds. Bank statements. Every record I had kept over decades. That night, I barely slept. By morning, my plan was clear. I wouldn't confront Ethan yet. I wouldn't warn him. I would let him believe he had won. At exactly 9 o'clock, I called the bank. I need to report unauthorized withdrawals, I said calmly. And I need a complete transaction history for the past 6 months. The representative's tone shifted immediately. I'm so sorry this happened to you. We'll begin an investigation right away. Next, I called Martin Hale, an attorney I knew through my library's reading group. Martin, I said, my son has stolen my savings and sold property he didn't have the legal right to sell. I need help and discretion. There was a pause. That's serious, he said. Come to my office this afternoon. When I hung up, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Silver hair neatly pinned. Calm eyes. A woman who looked like she belonged in a rocking chair, not a legal battle. Ethan had made the same mistake. He thought I was weak. That afternoon, I met my lawyer. And by the time I left his office, one thing was certain. My son hadn't just betrayed me. He had committed a crime. And while my son was planning his wedding, I was quietly preparing the case that would destroy everything he built. There's a moment when grief turns into clarity. For me, it happened somewhere between my lawyer's office and my driveway. I didn't cry anymore. I didn't replay old memories. I stopped asking why. Instead, I began observing. Martin didn't sugarcoat anything. What your son did checks every box, he said, tapping a legal pad with his pen. Unauthorized withdrawals. Fraud. Forgery. And the property sale. That alone could carry serious prison time. I nodded, hands folded in my lap. Do I have options? I asked. Yes. And more power than you realize. He laid them out carefully. Bank investigations. Title company notifications. Civil and criminal paths. Each step required patience, documentation, and restraint. Most people ruin their own cases by confronting too early, Martin warned. Anger feels good, but silence is stronger. So I stayed silent. I let Ethan believe I was confused. Hurt. Frozen. Behind the scenes, everything moved. The bank froze all remaining accounts connected to the transfers. Fraud investigators flagged every transaction. Screenshots became evidence. Timelines formed. The title company handling the Oak Ridge Lane sale responded within 48 hours. Their message was polite, but alarming. They had discovered irregularities in the power of attorney documents Ethan provided. The notary license was expired. The dates conflicted with my hospitalization records. Funds from the sale were frozen immediately. The buyers were notified. Lawsuits were coming. I forwarded the email to Martin with a single sentence. He forged it. That evening, my phone rang. Ethan. His voice was no longer cheerful. Mom, the bank called me. They are saying there's an investigation. I kept my voice neutral. That happens sometimes with large transfers. Well, fix it, he snapped. Just tell them it's fine. Is it fine? I asked quietly. Silence. Then defensiveness. I borrowed it. I was going to pay it back. You took everything, I said. Without asking. And the house sale, he added quickly. That was legal. I had authority. I never gave you authority, I replied. His breathing sharpened. You signed the papers, he said. Last year. In the hospital. My blood turned cold. I need to see those documents, I said. You're overreacting, he snapped. The wedding is in 2 days. Don't ruin this for me. I ended the call. That night, my neighbor and closest friend, Patricia, came over. A retired paralegal. Sharp as a blade. When I told her everything, her expression darkened. He thinks you're powerless, she said. That's why he's sloppy. We contacted the tenants together. Calmly. Transparently. They were stunned, but cooperative. Willing to testify if needed. Every piece fell into place. Then came the email that changed everything. The title company confirmed what Martin suspected. The notary listed on the power of attorney had been in another state on the date the document was allegedly signed. The signature didn't match my usual handwriting. The document was fraudulent. There was no misunderstanding. No gray area. Ethan hadn't made a mistake. He had planned this. That's when the final decision settled in my bones. I would not protect him from consequences. I would protect myself. 2 days later, I sent Ethan a text. I'll attend your wedding. I could almost feel his relief through the screen. He thought silence meant surrender. He thought my presence meant forgiveness. He was wrong. Because while my son prepared to say his vows, I was preparing to tell the truth. I smiled at my son's wedding, knowing the police investigation had already begun. The wedding was beautiful. That was the cruelest part. White roses lined the aisle. Crystal lights shimmered above polished floors. Everything looked perfect, expensive, deliberate, paid for with money my son never earned. My money. I arrived early, dressed in navy blue. Elegant. Understated. The kind of outfit people associate with proud mothers, not betrayed ones. When Ethan saw me, his face softened with relief. Mom, he said, hugging me tightly. I'm so glad you came. I knew you'd come around. I smiled. The practiced kind. The kind women learn when survival requires composure. His bride, Lila, approached next. She looked flawless in a designer gown that probably cost more than my first car. So nice of you to be here, she said. Ethan was worried you'd still be upset about the money thing. The money thing. As if it were a misplaced receipt, I thought. Families make adjustments, she added smoothly. This was for our future. I nodded. Of course. The ceremony was short. I watched my son promise loyalty, devotion, honesty. The irony tasted bitter. During the reception, I moved through conversations like a ghost. I laughed when expected, posed for photos, accepted compliments. No one noticed my hands were shaking. Halfway through the evening, my phone buzzed in my purse. Martin, police report accepted. Formal investigation underway. I exhaled slowly. Not yet. Let him have this night. Let him believe he was untouchable. 3 days later, the illusion shattered. Ethan and Lila arrived at my house without calling. He was furious. She was cold. What did you do? Ethan demanded, stepping inside like he owned the place. The title company froze the funds, he snapped. They are saying the power of attorney was forged. I closed the door calmly. Because it was. Lila laughed sharply. This is absurd. You're old. You don't even remember what you signed. Ethan's voice dropped. Just fix it. Call them. Tell them you authorized everything. I met his eyes. You stole from me. His face twisted. I borrowed it. You emptied my accounts. You sold property you didn't have the right to sell. Lila stepped forward. You don't need all that money. You're retired. Everything you own will be his someday anyway. The mask slipped. That was the moment I stopped seeing my son. I saw a stranger. You threatened to make me homeless, I said quietly. Ethan's jaw tightened. If you don't cooperate, we'll make this very difficult for you. How? We'll have you declared incompetent, Lila said smoothly. Tell everyone you're confused. Put you in a facility if necessary. The air went cold. That's a threat, I said. It's a solution, Ethan replied. Last chance, Mom. I stood. Get out. They laughed. I raised my phone. You have 5 seconds before I call the police. This time, they left. I pressed charges the next morning. The phone calls started soon after. Pleading. Apologies. Tears. Then anger. You're destroying my life, Ethan yelled over voicemail. You're choosing money over your own son. I listened once. Then blocked the number. Because the truth was simple. He had already chosen. What my son didn't realize was that the courtroom would expose everything he tried to hide. The moment I pressed charges, everything changed. Silence disappeared. My phone lit up with blocked calls, emails, messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Some begged. Some accused. Some threatened. Ethan tried every version of himself. First came remorse. Mom, his voicemail said softly, I know I messed up. I wasn't thinking clearly. Please, let's handle this as a family. Then came panic. I can't lose my job, he said in another message. If this goes on my record, I'm finished. I'll pay you back. I swear. Then came rage. You're doing this out of spite, he snapped. You've always been bitter. You want to control me. I deleted them all. 2 days later, Lila came alone. I watched her from the window as she stepped onto my porch, tailored coat, flawless. Makeup, posture straight. She rang the bell twice. Margaret, she said when I opened the door, woman to woman, we need to talk. Speak, I replied, not stepping aside. Her smile tightened. "Do you understand what criminal charges will do to Ethan?" she asked. "His career. His reputation. Our future." "Yes," I said calmly. "That's why they exist." Her composure cracked. "You're being unreasonable," she hissed. "He's your only child. Everything you have will be his eventually anyway. So I should die faster?" I asked. Her eyes hardened. "You're selfish," she snapped. "You'd rather watch him suffer than admit you overreacted." I leaned closer. "You didn't miscalculate my emotions," I said quietly. "You miscalculated my spine." She left furious. That evening, Patricia came over with food and wine, and 2 other friends. They listened as I told them everything. "You're doing the right thing," one said. "If you back down now, they'll do it again." They were right. A week later, the formal charges were filed. Fraud, forgery, grand theft. Ethan was arrested. When the case went to court, his defense tried to paint me as confused, vindictive, influenced. It didn't work. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, forged documents, notary testimony, medical records proving I was hospitalized when the signatures were obtained. Then I took the stand. I told the truth. About trust. About betrayal. About how it feels when the person you protected your entire life decides you're expendable. Ethan couldn't look at me. The jury didn't hesitate. Guilty. On all counts. The courtroom was silent when the verdict was read. Lila cried. Ethan collapsed into his chair. I felt nothing. At sentencing, the judge was clear. "These were not mistakes," she said. "They were calculated decisions made without remorse until consequences appeared." 7 years. Restitution ordered. As the handcuffs closed around my son's wrists, he finally looked at me. Not with anger. With fear. That night, I went home alone. I sat in my living room, surrounded by silence. I had won. And yet, something felt broken forever. I thought justice would bring peace, but what happened after the trial changed my life completely. Justice is loud in courtrooms. Gavels. Verdicts. Sentences. But afterward, it becomes very quiet. The days following Ethan's sentencing passed slowly. I woke early, made tea, tended my garden. Life returned to routine, but something fundamental had shifted. I no longer lived with fear. I no longer checked my accounts obsessively or slept with anxiety curling in my chest. The threat was gone. Ethan was transferred to a state facility 2 hours away. Lila filed for divorce within the year. The condo they purchased was sold under court order. Restitution payments began, small at first, but consistent. Money returned. Trust did not. Friends asked if I felt relieved. I didn't know how to answer. Relief isn't joy. Freedom isn't happiness. And justice doesn't erase grief. I had lost my son long before he went to prison. One afternoon, I received a letter. Ethan's handwriting. He wrote about regret. About fear. About how prison stripped away illusions. He apologized, not theatrically, not strategically, but quietly. "I don't expect forgiveness," he wrote. I just want you to know I finally understand. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Some wounds need time. Others need distance. In the months that followed, something unexpected happened. People began calling me. Neighbors. Friends of friends. Elderly women who'd heard what happened and wanted advice. Stories poured out, children misusing accounts, relatives pressuring. Signatures, family members treating age as weakness. I realized my pain had value. So I acted. With Patricia's help, I started hosting small workshops at community centers. We taught people how to protect their finances, how to spot manipulation, how to say no, even to family. The room was always full. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was useful. On my 63rd birthday, my friends threw a small dinner. Laughter filled my home. Candles flickered. Life felt full again.